All right, welcome everyone. And we'll call the meeting to order. This is the City of Frankfort Board of Commissioners special meeting. Today is June 6th, 4 p.m. And I'll ask the Madam Clerk to call for the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here. Sorry. Yes, here.
Commissioner Unger?
Present.
Commissioner Waldridge?
There she is.
Present.
Commissioner May?
Present.
Mayor Wilkerson?
Present. City of Frankfort has a quorum.
Alrighty, and I am Judge Michael Muller, and I call the Fiscal Court special meeting into session. And Clerk, please call the roll.
Squire Sebastian.
Here.
Squire Blackburn.
Present.
Squire Dykus.
Here.
Squire Tracy.
Here.
Squire Tanner.
Here.
Squire Wisman.
Present.
Judge Moeller.
Present. We also have a quorum, and we're ready to go.
And we appreciate everyone coming today and doing this, our first joint meeting as respective the Fiscal Court new board and the City of Frankfort Board of Commissioners. And the reason we're here today is to address the E911 the situation and just a little background. Back in 1991, the Board of Commissioners and the Franklin County Fiscal Court came together and agreed to find a sustainable way to pay for our 911 dispatch center. And back then, it was agreed to levy a $1 per landline, which was something that nearly everyone had, and so it was fair. It was the cost that was shared by the entire community. And there was a recognition also how important that dispatch was to the collective public safety of the citizens of Franklin County. I'll jump ahead 30 years, and the landline use has, of course, dropped dramatically. This has created a situation where only a few individuals and businesses shoulder the entire load for the entire community for this service. Not only has this created an unfair disparity in the community, it's also resulted in our 911 dispatch center to be underfunded. And that's forcing both governments to divert funds from other deserving programs. Current statistics, revenue from the landlines generate approximately $116,000 a year, and the cost of the dispatch center is upwards of $1.2 million up to $1.4 million. So by coming together today, we're making sure that Frankfort and Franklin County continues to be safe, and with a couple of considerations of small adjustments, we can continue to do our part to support the public safety of the entire community.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to take an opportunity to thank everybody for coming. And like the Mayor said, this is our first joint meeting, and I think it's exciting. It's good to see everybody come together and know the community needs to realize that we are working together on making things better for our community. Just want to take a moment to thank the Frankfort Plant Board for letting us have this meeting here at their location. I think it was very nice, and want to thank all the people that are going to present to us. And you know, today is just informational purposes only. I think both governing bodies are going to go back and discuss what's discussed today. So really today is just kind of a opportunity for us to get together, since it is kind of a common denominator, to talk about it. Just kind of a quick rundown. I believe as soon as I get done, there's going to be a short video, and there's going to be some presentations from county sheriffs, fire, city police chief, emergency management, fire chief, and then we're going to kind of open it up to commissioners and magistrates just to kind of talk about it openly. So, you know, we hope it's about an hour meeting, you know, be respectful of each other's time. There won't be anything voted on today. This is just to just have a conversation. So again, I want to welcome everybody and thank everybody to help put this together. And if you'd like to start the video, we'll get going.
Med-3 County Station 9, Med-3 County Station 9. You can be en route to the area 4715 Old Lawrenceburg Road, 4715 Old Lawrenceburg Road. Have a 1046. Dispatch Station out to Riverview Apartments, 101 Compton Drive in the laundry room. Callers are advising the laundry room dryer is on fire. They see lots of smoke. They're trying to get people to evacuate now. Riverview Apartments at the laundry room. Any unit in the area start that way. We're getting reports of possible active shooter at that location. We're trying to obtain further from our callers at this time. Correction, it's going to be 200 Miro. All units respond to 200 Miro Street for an active shooter on the 5th floor.
Good deal. Thank you for whoever put that video together. I think it hopefully shows the community how many people use E911. So at this time, I'd like to call the Sheriff's Department, and I know Deputy Willis is here. Sheriff Quire was unable to come this afternoon, so Daniel's going to do an amazing job and wow us all.
Thank you for that. Okay, the Franklin County Sheriff's Office has a very good working relationship with Frankfort E911. They provide a vital service to the citizens and community of Franklin County. Every 911 or call for service goes to the Frankfort E911, which is handled in a professional manner. From January 1, 2022 until now, Frankfort E911 has answered 17,269 calls for the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. When a call is taken by a dispatcher, they start a call that is documented in the CAD system. It shows the caller's name, description of call, deputy's name, unit number, respondent times, deputy was dispatched, and when the call is disposed of. This is all vital information needed to complete a thorough report. The dispatcher will stay online and give the deputy updates on the call they are responding to if needed. Our dispatchers are trained to assist callers with giving direction for CPR if needed. I have arrived on scene several times where a loved one has been performing CPR with the dispatcher still on the line talking them through it. These are the types of services we cannot afford to be without. Frankfort E911 assists our deputies in many ways. They will relay information to our other agencies that are responding to a call of service, like the fire department, EMS, coroner, animal control. This type of assistant helps save vital time when life and death is on the line. The Franklin County Sheriff's Office receives open records requests on a regular basis. Most of the time, it is months or even years old that they're requesting for. Frankfort E911 can access this information within minutes through this CAD system. I could go on and on about the work that Frankfort E911 does to assist Franklin County on a daily basis.
Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you.
Appreciate your presentation. Now, if Chief Brewer would like to come forward to the podium, please.
Thank you, Judge. Good evening, everyone. So just to give a brief overview of the County Fire's relationship with dispatch. County Fire operates 6 fire stations. We have approximately 23 pieces of response apparatus or different types of specialty units. In calendar year 2022, we responded to 3,430 emergency calls that range from fire, medical, various types of rescue, hazmat, general public service, special hazards such as trees blocking the roads. So for us, all of our calls go through dispatch one way or another. Most of them are all received through dispatch, and they dispatch the proper units out for the type of response it is. They take the information from the caller, and they will disseminate that information to figure out what stations and what units are supposed to respond to that call. Another way we use dispatch is they relay information and special instructions from our units to other responding units. There may be motor vehicle accidents, and if our units arrive on scene first, we may relay information to the sheriff's office or to an incoming MEG unit. So we rely heavily on dispatch to transfer that information. They also will have special calls or special addresses where we need to log special notes, whether it's how to gain access to someone who has a physical disability if there's an emergency. So they also have the ability to log special notes in there for us, so that if we go back to that address, they can give us that information as soon as we're dispatched. And another reason we use dispatch is for resources. So if we respond to a fire call, a lot of times our attention is focused on handling that situation, but we're also going to need special resources, whether it be gas utility or electric utility, someone to come help resolve that situation that we have to get shut off before we can finish doing our job. So we rely heavily on them. They'll call special wreckers if we have a large scene on the interstate or semi-trucks flipped over. And then also everything that dispatch does, they log all our times, they log all our information from the run, and then that is all interfaced with our incident reporting system that we'll use to complete our incident reports and all the responses that we make. So those are several ways that County Fire and dispatch are integrated together, and we rely on them. Thank you.
Chief, thank you very much. Mayor?
Okay, next up, we have the city police chief and fire chief, and I don't know if you all want to come up together, or you're welcome to, or however you see fit. And Chief Dusty Bowman, and Chief Jason Monroe.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Simply put, the way I would describe our E911 center, it is the heartbeat of this community. It is the lifeline that's needed. They're there 24/7, and I'm going to steal a phrase that I've heard from Chief Monroe in that it is truly an insurance blanket, full-time. Minimum staffing is 3 people. That way we can ensure there's a full-time county fire dispatcher, a full-time city dispatcher, and there's 1 dispatcher that's dedicated full to law enforcement. And why that's important is because they're all dedicated to a 911 line. So a 911 call comes in, now that takes them away from that service for a little while, and they have to cover. We realistically need a 4th individual in there, and we found that through some emergencies. When you go through some of the storms we went through, some of the active shooter incident, as you heard on the call, and realistically, we're 1 major catastrophe away, whether it be a wreck, whether it be a house fire, as the chief will tell you. We're 1 major incident away from sort of chaos in that room. However, the training they get, everything that they do is in a professional standard so that they can provide as much safety and care for the community. I mean, you think about this, as you just heard, 911 dispatchers don't just answer calls. They talk people through medical crisis, whether it be doing CPR, whether you have a homeless individual or somebody that's suicidal. They're that first contact that that person hears that might save a life. And that's why they are instrumental for the community and everything that we do. I can't tell you enough, and I can't stress this enough, they are as much first responders as any police officer or fireman that uniforms up. Thank you all.
Thank you.
So with the city fire and EMS, the importance of dispatch to us, we can start with the general med call or CPR call. They're already starting to talk someone through CPR as we are responding. They're picking, like Chief Brewer said, which units they go. So it's going to be a county fire truck and a city ambulance going out there, and they have to know which units to send, who's available at all times. There's times that we have ambulances and fire trucks all over the city doing different things. They got to know who's the closest. They got to figure out all these things at the drop of a hat. They have to think even faster than we do on scenes. They have to know our procedures, our protocols. When I arrive on a fire scene, I'm going to start calling for everything, including the kitchen sink. They got to know how to get it to me. And I can do that with 1 call on the radio, and they take care of everything else. That way I can focus on the safety of my firefighters and my personnel. So they're kind of our lifeline, not just the community's lifeline. When you dial 911, you know they're going to send the right people, but we also know that we're going to get what we need on scene because dispatch is doing their job and they're very good at it. And that's what dispatch means to us and this community. Thank you.
That's it for the presentations. We're opening it up for discussion.
we got
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
management.
sorry.
He's been on vacation.
Ray, we did not forget about you. I did not forget about you. Well,
Good
Here.
evening, Judge, Mayor, Commissioners, and Magistrates. Ray Kinney, I am the Director of Emergency Management for the city and the county. I'm probably the only person in the room that was here before we had a combined dispatch center. Originally, 911 calls went to the fire department at behind City Hall. We had a dispatcher who worked at the police department. There was no sheriff patrol. They did court stuff during the day, so sheriff patrol started after I came on. Fire department, I'm not sure, they may have dispatched their own or gone through the city. Often when I worked at the police department, early, we would get a call. It would go to 911, they'd send the fire truck and the ambulance, and the police officer would be sitting there on the street and watch the fire truck go by. 10 minutes later, we get a call of an injury, accident, or a fire, or whatever it may be. There was a lag. We created a combined dispatch center. Now, folks sit right behind each other, and they're talking, they're typing. When I started, it was paper log, and they were handwriting things down as the call came in. They were dealing with one call. They have to transfer that information. So the technology has come incredible. They just work together, see the call pop up, and the information's shared. They're dispatched out at the same time, and the response has improved greatly. So for my office, I plan for us not to have emergencies, but we know that's not true. It's all hazards. We heard the mention of utilities. We have a fire. Sometimes it's a wire down, a tree down, house on fire, people trapped inside. On March 3rd, we had probably 200 of those during one shift. Critical, extremely critical calls. And we had officers, firefighters, utilities. Everybody was running nonstop for about 8 hours. Dispatch, loaded up, and we had extra response during that time. That ended up being a FEMA disaster for us in almost all counties in central Kentucky. So for us, having a direct contact with the dispatch, learning what calls come in, whether it's an accident, which we have no control over, we just have to respond to. We help manage those incidents, and we try to prepare for them not to be a disaster. Sometimes they end up like a natural disaster, really overwhelming us, and our activities may go days, weeks, or years in the response. And my work is directly with dispatch to immediately find out the number of calls we have, the severity of the calls, to make sure all of the departments work together, our first responders, our public service agencies, our social service agencies, governments. We bring together all that information and bring it together. So it's very critical. We have a very, very good dispatch, and we fund them. And I'll go back to landlines. Also started before we had cell phones. And everything, we used to drive around, we would put dimes or quarters in our pockets out on patrol so we could call dispatch if we didn't get a radio call. And then the cell phone came out. And we can only pretty much use that after 9 p.m. And I work late shift. That was the coolest thing to have a cell phone. Now, many people have 2 cell phones. They've ditched the landline, and they're using their cell phone from their home. So it's totally changed how we get calls. We used to get one call from a house fire from the people inside on their landline. Now we might get multiple calls from cell phones all over the place reporting they see smoke. So things have changed a lot in my last 30, 35 years here. And I think that a lot of credit goes to centralized dispatch and the need to prepare for them to do the right thing. Thanks.
Thank you, Ray.
So, Mayor, if it's okay, I guess at this time, we'll kind of open it up for questions. So I guess if anybody wants to get started, we'll just kind of raise our hands and we'll go around the room. There's no rhyme or reason how we're going to do this. It's just a conversation for informational purposes. Squire Tanner.
I got 3 or 4 questions, and I'm sorry, but I need to get updated and up to speed on everything. Number 1, who owns the equipment now? Is it leased, or does the city or the county own all the equipment in the dispatch center? We own it?
The city or the county or both? City.
Yeah, city purchases.
Okay.
City owns it. How often is that updated? Is it updated yearly, monthly, every 10 years?
As needed.
As needed? The other question I have, is there any thought about the future of 911 whenever you have cell phones or videos coming in of fires or wrecks, or are we up to date? Can we do that?
I would say that we're not completely up to date. I know if you speak to our police chief and fire chief, we've had estimates from other communications. We do need to upgrade our repeaters because we have a lot of dead spots in our community. So there are some upgrades, an early estimate now, at least about $2 million worth for additional hardware that we need.
Can I keep on?
Keep going, Squire, keep going.
I told everybody I wouldn't ask the question, but I had to be bribed to shut up. But anyway, years ago when I was lobbying for the counties, they were really concerned about the next step for this, and they talked about leasing hardware and equipment that would handle text and videos, because people can video a wreck on the interstate or a fire, and they can much better than explain a house on 321 Street, whatever it might be. Here it is, a picture of it. And we can't have that technology got to there yet.
We don't have that technology yet.
Does it exist?
I think some of the technology, and I would ask guys if they want to jump in, but I understand that some of the latest technology we also like to look in is for text, being able to text into the dispatch rather than having to call. But yeah, as of this point, we don't.
I don't know how big a deal this is either, but now you can receive phone calls over internet, and y'all put fiber in everywhere. That'd probably eliminate, I don't know whether it'll eliminate landlines or not, but you know, you can get a widget put on there and you don't have any more phone bills. But it's very difficult to call 911, or impossible right now to do that from home if you do that. But I just wondered where we are. I also understood at that time there might be a possibility from leasing this equipment from various companies. I don't know where it ever got there or not, but I was just, it seems to me like we're right on the verge of having to spend a whole lot more money somewhere. But if you're gonna keep your technology up to speed with what everything else is, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I've been wrong more than once. But that's really all the other question I have, except the other question I have would be that mobile phones, whatever, they used to like pay 70 cents a month. And there was some changes in the legislation to increase that, maybe at $1, I don't know how much some. So how much money comes in from the cell phone fees?
So approximately we receive about it varies, $250 to $350, $400,000, it varies each year. But one thing we do for those fees, they help pay for 911, but we don't spend all of it every year, because we do keep some in reserve for if there is unexpected expenses or something breaks down, that we actually have money to pay for it.
I'm sure y'all all over, there is some grants from that fund that's given out by the state. I think there used to be. I don't know where it is or not. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Laura, if I could ask, on the cell phone thing, what percentages, or how is that structured? Like, what do they charge per cell phone for emergency services, or what actually is that?
I don't know the exact percentage. I don't know, that's what, Jason? Okay. We just know that we get a varying amount. I think it depends on the bill. There's a certain percentage, but I can find that out and bring it back to you all.
So is it from each individual cell phone companies, or I'm just curious how that works, or is it from?
I think it's on your bill, your cell phone bill. There's various local, state, federal taxes that are on there, and one of those.
If I might,
Go ahead, Squire.
if you buy a card, prepaid card, that's based on sales tax. And it goes to the state, and it's prorated out. I don't know how it's divided, but that's how they tax the card, rather than if you get a monthly bill, it's on the bill. Otherwise, it's not.
Okay. Next question or comment?
Judge.
You know,
Go ahead.
Commissioner
I'm
May.
sorry.
Commissioner May.
Sorry. Yep.
Commissioner May.
I wanted to go back to So we're talking about $1.4 million in operational costs, and currently we're bringing in $116,000. And the point of the conversation back to Chief Bowman, if you could speak to having 3 people on staff right now, but looking to really needing 4. Will that be included in the 1.4 million, and where we need to go with staffing needs, proposed staffing needs, or intended staffing needs?
I believe the current money that we're looking at right now is where the operational is currently, not with that additional person, so we would increase that amount with the added personnel we put in there.
Okay.
Squire Wisman?
Yeah, I'd asked at our last fiscal court meeting to have some of this information for this today, but I'm wondering if anyone can speak to any of our emergency management folks or legal maybe about what other communities are doing surrounding us. I know Shelby County, for instance, has done a fee structure on each parcel to pay for E911 services. Some other communities have put fees onto water meters and electric meters as a means to replace the old fee on phone lines that has effectively gone away. My understanding, and please anyone correct me, Ray, maybe, when we created the E911 services in 1991, it was paid entirely by cell phone fee, or not cell phone fees, but landline fees. So in effect, what we've done is shortchanged our own budgets by paying out of tax funds to the tune of $1 million a year now for something that was never intended to use tax funds, except for maybe gap financing to shore that up. But I understand a lot of communities are changing to meet the demand, and Laura, maybe you can speak to that then.
Yes. Versailles charges $59 a year. Shelby County charges $48 a year. Georgetown charges $8 per month per water meter. Lawrenceburg charges $4.21 per month per water meter. We were also looking at Covington, which charges $75 a year.
And how do those others charge if they're not water meter?
Some are by tax bills or just a separate fee.
Okay.
And I understand that those are all addendum fees on your property tax bill every year, at least those 3 communities I was aware of as well.
Correct.
And that's how they're passed through the sheriff's office and then onto the operations side. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson?
I just wanted to add something in here. The CMRS money, Squire is correct that that money comes from the state as it's divvied out. On average, we're bringing in about $303,000 from that amount, on top of the $116,000 that we're, believe it or not, still getting on the landline amounts. So that's which of course that number's going to go down. But perhaps those will go down if the other won't go up. But that's a total of $419,000 that's essentially pass-through funds that are used for this aspect, which leaves about $643,000. Well, let me say this: you take the $419,000 from that, the county has averaged payment of $224,000 over a 3-year period. That leaves $634,000 that the city has had to pay out of general funds or some budgetary amount, and the county is out of pocket the $224. So it's about 74-26 split.
Per the agreement, yes, it's 70. Per the agreement, it's 75-25, and just to also reiterate that we do not spend all of the state CMRS money every year. We do keep that in reserves just in case of emergency.
Any other questions or discussion?
Is there a separate balance on that account? Like, do we have a balance on that amount that hasn't been used?
City Manager or Alicia? The answer is yes. Is there an amount?
It's roughly around $300,000. It's in our restricted E911 fund.
Alicia, you might want to get to a microphone, or I can repeat what you say, so it just can be recorded.
Oh.
It's about $300,000 in our restricted E911 funds that's not spent.
How much on average are we putting away and not spending on average? Maybe it was.
Annually.
Yeah, or you can come right here.
I actually can't answer that particular question because I wasn't prepared to give you an on average, but unfortunately, as expenses have gone up, the amount of money that the city has moved from that restricted fund over to the general fund to cover has also gone up, so that in turn makes our restricted funds cash balance go down a little. But I'm not, my apologies, I don't have that off the top of my head. I did, however, look to see what we would have at June 30, and it's roughly around $300,000. So.
Is there a statutory requirement that requires us to put certain amounts back, or are we able to?
Not to my knowledge. The only KRS that I'm aware of, and we actually get agreed upon procedures by the auditor's office every 2 years on this, is that we must spend the money that the state gives us and that landline money strictly on dispatch, which is what we do. The city has Department 39 in our general fund. That's nothing but E911. Then we also have this restricted fund, and we try to keep some money in the restricted fund to cover some of those larger capital items we need to purchase. And then we move some money over to help offset the general fund. And when we bill the county, we remove that amount that we move over from what you guys have to pay. So we do give you credit for that on the invoices that you pay. So you're paying the deficit amount and not just an expenditures amount, if that helps any.
It sounds like while you're here, the emergency fund it's not increasing, it's going down, is the point, right? We're starting.
It's like everything else, yeah, I mean.
We're starting to use it up, and we're not adding to it. I think that was Commissioner
Right.
Thompson. How much are we adding on average?
And landlines, as landlines go down too, and the state's amount is, I think, somewhere between $250 and $350 each year. But landlines obviously are not going up, they're gonna go down, and expenses are going up, so it's safe to say that the amount that we could set aside is also going down too, so.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Thompson, another?
I guess my question is, if we don't use the $300,000 or $303,000 on average over the last 3 years as a pass-through that we're receiving directly from the state for this particular purpose, and we're socking it away, that's just a shell game. I mean, if we do spend it on that, and we have an emergency, we need to buy something, the city and the county are gonna have to fork up the money anyway. So number one, I don't understand the putting it away if our general fund is having to be increased each year based upon that, when all we're doing is saying, well, we're gonna put $300,000 over here, but if we have to spend money, we're still spending the extra money each year over here. I don't understand why we don't have that as a natural flow through. But if there's a reason, if we're required to, I understand. But if not, we're creating a problem that doesn't exist. And I mean, yes, we may have an emergency, but that money's going to come from general fund. I mean, we're just saying this money is different from this money, but it's the same money.
I would like to
City
address
manager.
that. It's not a shell game. We're not hiding anything. Sometimes if we had ended up with 300,000 in previous years, it would have been lower. What this allows is that if there is purchases to be made, that we can do that out of the funds, and we do it very strategically. But there's nothing nefarious. It all goes 100%. So even if we use that, let's just say $250,000 to $300,000 that we get from the state every year, we zero it out. That still leaves a sizable $600,000-700,000 that has to be paid. It's for us being prudent with our funding, that if there is emergency purchases for repair, that we can do it quickly without having to go back to the county and bill or talk about it. bid it out, do whatever, that we can quickly take care of it. It's strictly to be prudent and to be safe.
If I can step in and say, I think what are you saying? Like if we had a deficit last year,
Right.
and we had to put it, 600,000 into
All
the
I'm saying,
911. Why didn't we use the 300,000 if it was restricted?
well, first of all, I want to say I don't think anything nefarious is going on. What I'm saying is that if I have $300,000 and I put it in a savings account and I want to use that $300,000 if there's an emergency, and I don't use it for the $300,000 that I need to pay for the annual E911, I'm still going to have to pay for the emergency at some point anyway. That's still going to be money that we're going to be out. And so I just don't, I don't think it's nefarious. I think it's just one of those things where we're creating a restricted account for those items that we could go ahead and already spend annually anyway. If there's an emergency, that's why we have the general rainy day fund anyway. And I don't think it would require, bidding and things of that nature. I think it would be like any other, emergency purchase that would have to go through and require the mayor's signature. I'm just saying, why are we making the accounting more difficult? Because at the end of the day, we're still going to spend the same amount of money if there is an emergency.
Mayor, if I
Yes.
may. So I started with the city in 2020, and at that time, we were moving $220,000 a year over. I actually increased it to $330,000. So we're actually moving over about what the state gives us. So we're really only keeping, roughly around $100,000 or so of that money. And the fund balance each year for E911 has gone down since I've been here because we've been moving more money over. And on top of that, we do actually have some expenses out of that restricted fund, Commissioner Thompson. It's just this year alone, we've spent about $160,000 in expenses in that restricted fund, in addition to the expenses that we've had out of the general fund as well.
But if we
So-
spent $160,000 this year, we wouldn't have had to have spent $160,000, say, last year in the pass-through money. That's all I'm saying, is that it's,
Well, so if I may also, when I got here, and I feel comfortable saying this because I know a lot of you guys are newer. What I was told was that it was kind of a silent agreement of sorts with the city and the county to not move all that money over because we didn't want to have these huge capital expenses and not have at least some money sitting there to cover those. For instance, the CAD system was around a $260,000 or $70,000 system in just year one, and we've got progressive payments in the next 4 to 5 years. I don't recall how many years, like $83,000, $87,000, $90,000, $95,000. And then the other thing, for the city's benefit at least, and the sake of the city, if we have to spend on capital expenditures, I believe we, as good stewards to the county, would have to let you guys know we're doing that so you can put that into your budgets.
Correct.
And then most likely we would get the payment the following year. So some of that is strategic. I mean, I have increased what's gone over to the general fund. I haven't moved the entire amount over each year, but I have increased it some, so.
I'd
I don't
also
know if
like-
that helps any.
I'd like to also
Hold on.
focus on the future. So we're here today because we know that $1 per month per landline doesn't work. And if I think about the future and just internal discussions that we've had, that if the 911 dispatch center was fully funded, we could take the funds from the state and build that up, because we know we're going to need to spend about $2 million in upgrading our repeater sites and our radios. So we could take the funds, the state funds, build that up for a few years, and then pay for it out of that. So then there wouldn't be a dramatic ask on the city or the county side for $1 million. So if we use that as a way to build up for these large capital purchases, I think it's better budgeting for us in the long term. So I think moving forward, let's think about, like, everything would be in the restricted fund. We'd have certain rules, and then we could better manage the funding and the payments for not only operationally, but for capital purchases.
All right, I'm going to Squire Westman.
Yeah, I'd like to thank City Manager for saying that. What I'm thinking is about the future here. You know, we have a unique instance, as we all seen recently, as a capital community, unique threats that pose hazards to this community and people that we serve with our E911 services that are emergency management that are much larger than the base of folks that live here and reside here every day. I want to think about the future here. I don't want to frame this conversation into what the city's responsible for, or the county, or what the divide is, because no one thinks about where their division line is in their district when they call E911. They just know they need help, and we need to find a way to cover it. We had an agreement in 1991, effectively, that jointly combined us to create a service that was better than we could do individually, right? And Alicia, I remember distinctly having the conversation before you came on, when we hired you, and then subsequent, that was kind of an agreement that we had a fund balance, that rather than the city and county coming together regularly and deciding how to spend that was kicked over and used for what type of expenses it was maintained to be used for. So that we could meet the need more regularly, more easily, without having to negotiate the political system of what those funds were to be used for. So those funds from the state in many ways are shared by the city and county in our equal responsibility, right? So setting those aside, I remember the conversation distinctly that was an easier way, rather than going back to the two political bodies continuously, to meet the need of the shared service. So I think that's a good way to proceed. But again, I want to focus on the future of this, and I wanted to ask specifically about where we sort of see E911 going in the future. What are the needs? What are the capital expenditure needs? What are the increased staffing needs? I remember that conversation has been going on for many years, that we need increased staffing, particularly in light, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, we had some retirements that really affected, and people were very concerned about just meeting minimum staffing needs because we had no real reserves. So can you all speak a little bit maybe to what kind of future we're looking at, what conversations have had or been done with emergency management staff and others about new technology, as Magistrate Tanner spoke to, and sort of where the E911 is going in the future. I'm sure you all have been in conferences and things that are talking about what other communities are doing, because everyone's sort of tackling this thing right now all together, and I'm sure there's some trends that we're maybe seeing that we aren't aware of. If you could kind of inform us on any of that.
Squire, who were we asking that to?
In any
Who is qualified to answer
looking
this
over there, I was like, I didn't know if somebody's acknowledging you or what.
Jump up without an invitation. I wasn't about to get into that mess.
You
So,
want to go to the microphone?
clear up some things.
You want to go to the microphone? And since you're already up. Yeah. We should move it. Should have moved you all over there.
But to kind of answer Squire Tanner's question, first off, I was messaging with our E911 director. There is no technology he knows of somebody being able to contact 911 through video. The other side of that is, if they're going to have to, even if there was video, they're going to have to communicate an address. Just showing us a picture of a house or a video, that doesn't tell us where we're going. And sometimes GPS isn't 100% accurate with specific pinpoints. But we already have the ability to text with E911. That's already there. In fact, we just had a conversation earlier with, in our briefing and stuff, with the transportation cabinet about some different things that could have went smoother and stuff, as far as cutting out some middle people, because they had staff that was texting one person who was texting another to tell a supervisor to let us know they were still at somewhere, when they could have just texted E911 themselves. So that's already there. Ultimately, through some of the events we've seen, a fourth individual inside the E911 center is essential for many reasons. Once again, I pointed out earlier, if someone's walking somebody through CPR, well, that eliminates somebody on a radio and another call taker. Well, then if you have an accident, a collision, then you have somebody that has to contact tow companies. You have to have somebody that's relating, because I don't know if y'all have ever got to listen to radio traffic on an accident. There's a lot of radio traffic between officers, between fire and EMS, between dispatchers themselves, as well as the call taker, because if you have an injury accident, you're not getting one call, you're getting about 20. So, and one person might be talking to one person in a car, another's to another, and you're getting 2 bits of information. So two complex calls, I'll say, has now eliminated and put everybody on phone calls. So then if another call comes in, or if there's something else going on the radio, we have to put that caller on hold. So essentially, having that 4th individual in there would be huge for the community, and it would aid us in a little more flexibility in some of the stuff we do. Some of the parts I left out is in there, our E911 center just doesn't take calls. They just don't dispatch calls. We're responsible for missing person reports. They're responsible for EPOs and DVOs. They have to track that by paper as well as what comes out over the system. So we have people that's responsible for maintaining those files every day because there's expiration dates they have to keep track of, everything from that point. So for the future, I'd love to have a 4th position, and ultimately I'd like to add a couple of new stations in the event of, say, like, I'll use the windstorm as a perfect example. We had all stations working we could. We had 2 additional dispatchers on phone, as well as we had an officer who we kept over from day shift that was on an unrecorded E911 or radio channel, dispatching calls for 2 officers for down trees, down power lines, and non-emergency things. So really and truly, with our size, with the growth in the community, we need that 4th body in there.
Any questions from our side?
Can I just clarify?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understand. It
Yes.
sounds, oh, I'm sorry. It sounds like an extra staff person, full-time staff person, and about $2 million in upgrades. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, the upgrades themselves are just the towers. Our towers are almost 20 years old, and they're about 3 years past where they should have been upgraded.
I just want to make sure I have the numbers right in my head.
Yes, yeah, there would
Okay.
be, yeah, you're looking at that for another to add an additional workstation. I think that's around $50,000. Because if you haven't been in our E911 center, I know we've had a couple invitations and scheduling hadn't allowed it, but you'll see that each dispatcher has 5 monitors they're responsible for. And they have to, whether it's one of them's for the radio, one's for the phone, one's for the mapping system. We have Crime Stoppers that they're responsible for. There's a lot of different things that come in there behind the scenes that is a lot more than just taking calls and sending them out to officers and firemen. Sir?
So.
Oh, hold on, I'm sorry, I don't think am I allowed to? I just
Let it
took
fire
control of
now.
this meeting, Judge.
I've had it. You're doing a good
Mayor, I
job.
apologize.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm gonna
go ahead.
Drink some water or something.
So you say you need one more staff person?
Yes.
I know you're running 24/7. Is it 3 shifts a day?
2 shifts.
2
We work
shifts a
on
day.
12-hour
So-
days.
So would you be hiring one more, or would you be essentially hiring 2?
Ultimately, you're probably looking at hiring 2 to add to those other
To
squads.
have one more
Yes.
staff on site? Okay.
But if I could ask, it sounds like that's really an issue when there's something tragic happens, a storm or something kind of
Well,
off
that's
kilter.
the extreme thing, but even if it's not, I don't want to say something like a storm is, but if you take, one day we had a tanker that overturned and spilled, well, then that ties up a dispatcher permanently because they're going to be affixed to emergency management, making every call for them, so that pulls them away. We're really a couple of calls away from needing that 4th person. And at any time you look at a murder scene, something like that, those type calls for us, or even a house fire, if it's big enough or it has apartments, you're going to have 1 to 2 dispatchers tied up permanently until those scenes are cleared.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Could I ask, Dusty?
Yes, sir.
Sort of, we have folks that are trained as backup, right? In the instance that we have a catastrophe in this community, I always think about the days that we have, marches on downtown for something related to the Capitol, and the majority of our staffing force is then tied up with that for the day. But then, maybe I have someone calls out in my district all the way out at Paul's Grove that needs help.
Right.
How do we balance? Could you elaborate a little bit on sort of how we pick up the slack in those instances for us.
In
And
those
county's not
cases, we
terribly familiar.
now did something since you've been gone, Mr. Wisman, or sorry, Squire Wisman. We have a dispatcher that's actually on call. Every day we have a dispatcher on call in case there's an event that requires. We also have a couple of dispatchers that are trained and are called our TAC dispatchers, which is if our tactical team gets called out, because that's a separate radio station in itself for them to communicate on, we'll have a dispatcher dedicated solely with the tactical team. So yeah, we have those that can be called in and have that fortune. Thing is, even with pulling somebody in, usually when you do that, they're going to be dedicated to one specific incident. So then if you have a couple other that takes place, and I say that because, once again, as I described it, and I stole it from Chief Monroe, this is an insurance policy, because and I agree with you, it's not about, I like what you said, because we are providing an insurance blanket for the county and the city 24/7.
And Commissioner Waldridge, we haven't heard from you yet. Do you have a question or anything you want to add?
I appreciate everyone sharing again all that they have, because I think I've gone to all of these meetings, so it's pretty redundant. But for the most part, I think we're here, looking to see, are we going to increase our fee for E911? And have we come to a conclusion, or will we be coming to a conclusion that this is called the city and the county E911 and that this needs to be split? I think when we're looking at this, that we need to understand that I think it may have been Squire Tanner said something in regards to the equipment, and we took responsibility for that. And I think Commissioner Thompson then shared, the expenses coming out and if we needed to go in our rainy day fund. I just want to make clear, we're here to do a partnership and continue this partnership, but we're looking and trying to increase a fee. We're also looking to divide this evenly, as it is the city and the county 911. When we look at our equipment, yes, I guess to Squire Tanner's comment, you could say that it's the city. Technically, it's really not. We are managing it, we are housing it. But really, it's our equipment that the city is managing and taking care of. Those funds coming in right now from you as the county, city, and state are taking care of those items and paying for those items. So I want to make sure that the verbiage that we're using, even though we're managing and housing that, it's the E91 equipment that we are now trying to make sure and trying to get to where we can be 50-50, which to me only makes sense. When we look at the increase, maybe that's something in regards to how much effort that it took into clearing for the gun incident over at the transportation area. What does that look like, and how many people did it take from the city and the county to do that? And is it comparable to what they are spending into our E911? I think we need to take that in consideration as well. I think going back to what City Manager Haig had shared, also in regards to the strategic spending, and I believe Alicia touched on that, is it does make sense to keep some of that money going over into an account for us to be able to have expenses that may pop up or screens that may die out. Therefore, we don't have to call a special meeting for us, the commission, to approve and the county to approve. That is one pot of money that is sort of mixed with the state's money, city, county. To me, it seems all together in that one fund to take care of an expense without the uphold of having joint meeting to take care of something that needs to be taken care of as soon as possible. So I think that only makes sense. And I know that Commissioner Thompson had said, it's there, why not spend or out of the rainy day fund? When you say rainy day fund, that is only dipping into the city money, and then we have to then send that to the county to see if they're going to reimburse us. And I think the goal here is to get on the same plan, a strategic plan, so the county knows exactly what we do, what they do as far as E911 in county, what the total expenses are, what is completely needed to run our E911 appropriate and efficiently for both the city and the county, and then for them to step in and do 50% of this cost expense that is left between the city and the county. I don't know what else. I think Judge Miller, I believe he said that we weren't going to do any votes, which is fine tonight, but I think this is some of the things we need to get leaving from this moment, and I think we're coming up on an hour. I believe he said he was trying to push an hour. this is what we need to understand. Are we going to do this 50-50? And is there going to be an increase of fee? And understand that this is E91 city and county. We both have our priorities here. We both have our emergency management is taking care of this. We're looking for the county to do their part in taking care of this 50%. When we look at calls, sometimes calls are increased in the city. Sometimes calls are increased in the county. When we look at the last emergency we had in regards to the wind and the trees down, when you look at those numbers, more of those numbers were in the county, and they were not even, the E911 in city and county was not even really servicing so much of the city so much than they were than the county. So we have to look at those things. I don't want to say that one's more important than the other, and I don't want to keep pulling numbers because it's not the case. Tomorrow, it could be a city issue. The next day, it could be the county issue. The point is keeping our community safe as a whole, and we both deserve to put in 50-50 to keep our community safe as a whole. It does not come down to numbers. It does not come down to runs. It comes that we need the most efficient 911 service for our entire county and city, and helping with the state facilities that we need. That's the decision we need to come up with, and we need it laid out on what that's going to cost us. That's my comment.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Waldridge. And we'll hear from Commissioner Unger.
I just wanted to thank everyone for being here. I feel like this conversation is long overdue. And I do also appreciate City Manager Haig for pushing this forward, educating me personally on it, as well as the current BOC. I hope that we can all agree that we need to keep this conversation going and come back to our respective bodies and figure this out. So just appreciate being here with everybody.
Any others? Well, I want to give the county a chance to take a turn here, but no. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to just state a couple things. I understand, Squire Wisman, you sit in a unique seat, as that you were involved with the city aspect, and now you're at the county. Although it kind of surprises me, Squire, that you said the reason that you set that up is so that the city could make those decisions and not have to go to the county or have a joint county meeting. That is interesting, considering that you are a county magistrate right now. But that being said, when I first started this conversation, I don't know if I need a whiteboard or what to explain, but what I started out by saying, I don't think there's anything nefarious, I don't think there's any problem. We're going to the county and we're asking the county to pay 50% of this. But we have this restricted fund that we're putting state money away to, and if we decide to spend it, we're just spending it. We're making the decision. County's not making any decision. They don't have any say at all in that decision. And therein lies the problem. I mean, we've had at least two people say, we don't have to keep coming back together and talk about these things. Why? Let's keep coming back together and talk about these things. I mean, I don't see a problem with being more transparent about the money. When it comes to, and Squire Wisman, I'll say this, let's talk about the future. I agree. That's why I'm talking about this and how things are done each year. And I can understand from a perspective of let's have a little money socked away in case we need it. But we're spending the same amount of money out of our general fund every year that we're not spending and putting away. So there is no savings. We're spending the same amount of money. So I'm not trying to argue that fact. What I'm simply saying is, if there's a restricted fund that one organization is making determinations on, how can we in good faith go to Judge Mueller and say, hi, we would like for you to pay half of this, but we're going to make a bunch of the decisions when it comes to equipment and things of that nature. And Squire Tanner, you're right. We do own it because 75% of it was being paid by us. But if we're going to get to a point where we're going to start discussing a shared responsibility, there has to be shared decision-making ability as well. And that doesn't matter. I agree with Commissioner Waldridge. Let's not worry about numbers. Let's not worry about how many sheriff's deputies there are out on the road. Let's not worry about how many FPD officers there are. Every time a call comes in, we want to make sure that it's answered and it's handled. But I don't see the problem with having more transparency. And when I first started the discussion, I said, I don't think this is nefarious. I still don't think it's nefarious. But I think if we're going to go to the county and ask for an equal partnership, then it needs to be a truly equal partnership. And I understand why it was originally done to sock some money behind because we didn't know what might happen. But if you don't use that money as pass-through, you still have to take that same amount of money to pay your bills. So it's important to understand that it's not a savings on an annual basis. It may be over time. And we have to allow the county to be involved in that discussion. That's just common sense, and that's where I'll leave it. Thanks.
Squire Tanner.
I would like to clear up one of the comments or questions that I had about who owned the equipment. I was getting at, does the dispatch center, didn't matter who owned the equipment. I was looking for, do we own it, or does AT&T own it, or some other company that we were leasing it from?
City owns
Because having a leased equipment, you can keep it up to date without having to get into the $350,000. Because that'll be under the contract to keep it up to date, whoever you leased it from. And that thought was floating around back when I was working for another place. But anyway, maybe I confused everybody when I asked who owned the equipment.
Mayor.
Commissioner
Yes,
Walden.
Commissioner Watt, yeah.
Thank you for that, clearing that up, Squire Tanner. But I wanted to piggyback on what Kyle was sort of saying, and I hope, Commissioner Thompson, I hope that, I don't know if it was referring to Wispin or it was my comment when I was saying that, we didn't have to come back and meet. I'm all for a meeting with the county. And I think that this is a good first meeting because I think the county is way behind where we are with this E911 as far as information. I think once we get on the same page to know how things run, when they run, how much they cost, that's the scoop of information that we need. That doesn't stop meetings, but it's almost like if you and your wife have joint banking accounts and you have come to an agreement that anything over $500, she and you guys need to come together and communicate about that. Anything under $500 she can go spend on her own or whatever that may be. And that's what I'm trying to express. Like if something happens and we get hit by electric, like lightning or something and our screens go out, that's something we can go ahead and do if it's underneath of a certain amount. And the county is aware that we, the city, will go ahead and move forward and correct that if it's underneath of a certain amount. If it's over a certain amount, then we come back together to see what that looks like, whether that's RFP, whether they can get a better, count, amount than we can, whatever that is. So I'm not opposed to meeting, but I don't want to feel like we need to be meeting every single month or every single week in regards to something when we can solidify what that account fund is for, when it can be spent, and to also make sure that we're communicating with the county when that expense is needed. And when it's paid for. And I think that's the county has felt, I wouldn't say slighted, but they've been left in the dark on really how this works and how everything else works as far as equipment, cost, and expenses, and also what we look forward to, the 2 million and maybe 2 more people, 1 person on site and maybe a couple of stations. This is the information they're wanting to gather to make these decisions. And so I think that still coming together later on is definitely a need, but I think we just need clarity on when we expend out of that count, and do we, the city, have the only say on expending out of that count, to what degree or what expense? I hope that makes sense.
Can I say something, please?
Yes.
If you don't mind. So the county budgets for around $250,000 to provide to the city. We bill the county quarterly. They send over a payment for E911. The city is currently budgeting for all of E911. So we budget for and treat E911, whether it's the restricted funds or the general fund, Department 39, exactly the same way we do every other fund that we have and all the other departments within the general fund. So I don't exactly know what Commissioner Thompson's trying to say there, except what I'm telling you is that we are doing this exactly the same way we do every other fund that we have. And it's my understanding the county is only budgeting for what they send to us. we still have to do every other expense for E911 exactly the same way we do all the expenses for the city. So there's, and a lot of that stuff comes to the commission when it needs to. All POs are approved. We budget for things. We budget for expenses out of the restricted fund. We budget for a transfer to the general fund. We budget for all of the expenses coming out of the general fund, Department 39. So it's as transparent as any other fund that the city has. I just want to make that clarification. Thank you.
Squire Wisman.
Yeah, thanks, Judge. You know, the E911 agreement as we have it currently is effectively for the city operating a service that we're contributing to. This is my understanding, maybe someone could correct me. The E911 center, the dispatch center, is a city function at the moment. The county is just contributing to that. It was set up this way so we didn't have to do this dance so often. And I think it's worked, and it's a testament really that for 32 years it's worked without much interaction between the city and the county, except for now we're coming to a time where technology has changed and we need to find another way to fund this program. You know, there's been a few suggestions here. I'm not of the opinion that I want to change that dynamic so much. I think it works well. The city has more resources in many ways in this area than the county does, and I think that's to the benefit of our community. We need to come up with a different way to pay this. I'm not in favor of taking additional tax dollars that we're thankfully somewhat maybe being forced into this conversation because of the revenues that we're going to be losing in the future. But I think we need to come together to find a new way to transfer this old fee on landlines to a new opportunity, and the state's only given us a couple of venues to do that. I also think it behooves us to start considering an ask to the state to help out and contribute to this fund, given the services that we provide to the state. We all know that the state's contribution in lieu of taxes is minimal in this community, so maybe this is a way we can start having that conversation. So I suppose the request, I have two requests, is if we can get an actual breakdown of everything. I have, the state's $250 to $350. I have cell phones are $350 to $400. I have landlines at $116. The city's $600 and the county's $224. If we can get an actual breakdown of funds that we're spending right now, and I know I got it, Laura, but I'm not sure that everybody did, as well as what potential costs there are that we're facing in the new future, 2.5 million or whatever it's looking like here. And I suppose I'm going to suggest that maybe it would be a good opportunity for the mayor and the judge to set up a task force to look at this and look at our alternatives. I personally think that the way forward that is favored by most counties right now is a fee on county property taxes per parcel, and I think that's likely going to be the way that we have to go, or we have to consider going, but I don't see us answering that today. More of the question is, are we going to keep the current agreement with the city operating the dispatch center and a county's contribution, and how we're going to pay for it? And I think that needs to be answered in a smaller group that's focused on those services. And I want to have some additional conversation about the really rural parts of our community and the services that we provide them, and if there's anything that technology-based that we might be able to better serve those areas of our county with the unique topography that we have dead zones that people may have to get in their car and drive to an area to use a cell phone to be able to report an accident in a holler or a fire that's on a rural road or something like that. So I think there's some larger conversations we need to have that this seems appropriate to be the start of, but as I see it, those are the two main questions that we need to decide as a body jointly. So thank you.
Perfect. Mayor?
Does anybody, I was going to say, does anybody have any objection to that, where the judge and we could put together a committee, if you will, task force, and get input and bring back to the respective boards a possible solution? That's something we could vote on. Any discussion on that?
I have no objection to it.
Commissioner Waters, comment, question?
I did not have one on that or on Mr. Wisman's 2 or 3 items that he had. I had a statement just to say, E911 is a little bit bigger than sometimes what we look at, because like the city is getting ready to buy another ambulance, right? and we do the ambulance service for the county as well. So I just want to take that in consideration. It does go a little bit further than just E911 and the expense that the city is putting in, because we do run the EMS service for our city and the county, and we do a lot of transfers, and the expense of a EMS and updating all of our ambulance and things like that, it's a cost expense. So I just want to throw that out there to keep that in the minds of everyone else, being that Squire Wistman had brought up maybe a task force. I think that's a good idea, and I think that putting the cost of our EMS ambulance and things of that nature on there as well. So
It's an
City
excellent point,
manager.
and we do have a separate EMS agreement with the county that is up to date. I think there's 2 more years left on that agreement that deals specifically with purchase ambulances, calls, costs,
That's
things like
not
that.
on the agenda today.
Correct. So I just want to say that there is a separate agreement on that.
Right.
That is not a part of
We
it.
understand, but it's not on
sorry, I was just adding that to.
Right.
I give her.
We hear you. We hear
Squire
you.
Wistman's task force. I apologize for that all to be one. Sorry.
I'm gonna ask anybody in the crowd, anybody have any information or anything you would like to share before we adjourn? Crickets. Anybody else?
I'll entertain a motion from the
Motion
member
to
of the board.
adjourn.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Waters, we have a second. Commissioner Unger. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign? All right.
Thank you
We're
guys for
adjourned.
coming.
Can I use your gavel?
Sure.
Judge, move to adjourn. There is some things that.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye. All those
I
opposed say
voted
nay.
on theirs. I voted
We
on
are
it.
adjourned.
I was out of order.
It's okay. I don't think.